a good weekend of judging once again?
Yeah, it was good. It was down in South Carolina. It was 75 degrees and sunny and
Oh man,
great weather, great weather. So,
nice.
how about yourself?
I was at the St. Louis Super Regional, so we were nice and dry and warm inside the big dome there. But 58 bands, and I'll tell you what, band directors and their staffs, they're doing a good job out there. We can all improve, and that's kind of why we're doing this show. But I got to tell you, I'm really proud of what our colleagues are doing around the country. Groups are getting better. There are groups that I saw make finals Saturday night that 6 years ago could barely get around the field. And so directors are doing some good stuff out there, Randy. They really are.
Yeah, they sure are. And I know we talked before the season started that we thought the bands were going to be really good because the one thing music educators tend to do is rise to the occasion and
Yep.
always, over prepare themselves to the point where they really excel. So we're
Yep.
certainly seeing that come to fruition this season, and that's great. So, what's on your mind today?
Well, just a suggestion for people that are still going at this time of the year, and especially if you're getting ready to go into an indoor stadium. Now, you and I did a session with Tony Lyman um, a little while back about going indoors, but this is a little different. We didn't really talk about this aspect of it, I don't think. If you're rehearsing outside and you're going to an indoor stadium that weekend, I think you got to be a little bit judicious in how you decide, am I going to rehearse inside? Am I going to rehearse outside? And my suggestion is this: if you live in a part of the country where it's really cold already, let's say you're getting ready for a 3 hour rehearsal on a Thursday night and it's 40 degrees out. Now, a lot of people will say, and some of my best friends and colleagues will say, Richard, they got to be out because they got to be moving and playing. And I totally get that. So I'm going to suggest that maybe you do an hour of that out there, and maybe you take another hour and do just visual out there, so you're not worrying about the playing. But I think at some point, if you're going indoors, you got to tune indoors, you got to balance indoors, you got to work on sound indoors. And Randy, you know, because you and I did this with a group the other day, we took them in a gym, and because they were going to a dome that evening, and we took, or I'm sorry, the next day they were going to the dome. And then we took them in a gym, spread them out all over the place. So they felt like they were by themselves and asked them to perform at a high level in time with the quality we had talked about. We tuned, I think if you remember, we spent like 45 minutes tuning like three chords, which I think drove the kids crazy. But then that same group ended up doing really, really well, this weekend. So I think that being kind of careful. If you ask your kids to play outside all the time, they get used to that different pitch level. They get used to their horns feeling different. Even percussion, I think their hands feel different, etc. So certainly with color guard, it is. So just something to think about. Just maybe try a little bit of getting a gym, spreading them out in the gym so that they're doing some inside work. Plus, in a gym, they'll also hear the echo. And if they hear the echo, they can get used to ignoring that echo when they get in the dome.
Yeah, definitely want to think about the amount of time the brass players have the horn on the face with the cold weather. Avoid swelling. So
Mhm.
that means limit the reps. If you're doing 4 reps on something, a series of charts, at the maximum 1 rep where the brass are actually playing.
Yep.
And really try to avoid lip slurs in the cold. In fact, I often with Lawrence would just warm up inside and then come out and we'd clean drill. And then sometimes we wouldn't even play for a run through. We would just Aaron buttons and just have the percussion and front ensemble play.
We did
Uh,
the same thing at Carmel.
yeah, and as far as the tuning is concerned, I don't know how you guys handled it, but obviously you can only control and push in so much,
Right.
and we all know the variance between front ensemble pitch and what happens to wind pitch. But I think it's really really important that if you've trained your kids to listen to each other, that they just do that. You can only get the pitch up so much with wind instruments, and depending on the temperature. So just make sure they're matching and they're playing with good sounds. They're matching within groups of people and usually the rest takes care of itself. Judges understand what happens to ensemble pitch when the
Right.
weather gets cold. I
Right.
mean, there's not a lot anybody can do. So really,
And
really
that
important. The other thing is when you're transiting at an event, brass players should be keeping their mouthpieces
Hmm.
warm in their palms. You know, you can use those heat packet things in your gloves, and there's all kinds of tricks there to just keep the mouthpieces warm so that when they go to put it to the face, that opening attack is not being played on a cold mouthpiece. So that's important too.
Great point. And if you have a soloist that's going to come up and pick up a horn that hasn't been touched, there are these warmer bags that I think people use like for pizzas and stuff like that.
Yep.
I mean, I saw a couple of bands use those last couple of weekends, and it works. It works because the kid will pick up the horn and it's normal temperature and they can just go. So that's another thing to think about. If you are outside, guys, the thing that Randy was talking about too is so important. Practice that maybe that hour that you're outside and you're playing. Uh, Practice with your kids listening at that different pitch level to see if they can tune. And I think that will help them to remind themselves that, yeah, they can listen, even though it's not the pitch level they're used to, they can still listen and match and get rid of the waves, get rid of the beats. So I think that's a great point, Randy.
Yep. Well, we wish everyone the best as they conclude their seasons over the next 3 to 4 weeks. And we'll see you again next week on our version of Coffee Talk.
Take care, everybody.